Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
How you doing?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you guys for having me today. This is a really important conversation, very important topic.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today. Want to start off with a really, really important question
Yes.
that I think is on everyone's minds.
Most critical.
And that is, are you a convert?
My convert story is very interesting. In that I always tell people I was not blessed to be a convert. I was not blessed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained it that I would be born as a Muslim, but my father converted to Islam, and a lot of people think that I'm a convert, and they're always shocked. And one thing I realized recently actually is that my son, who has my last name, who's tall, who has my skin tone, he will also carry the burden of always being assumed to be a convert. So then he'll say, no, my grandfather converted, and then my dad is born Muslim. So the answer to your question is, I am not a convert. I'm a born Muslim, but converts are, of course, beautiful, beautiful people who have lived beautiful experiences. My dad always tells me about how he learned about Islam so beautifully and organically. And I think it's such an amazing part of our religion is that we get to experience and see people that had to find their way here and that Allah Ta'ala guided them.
So where does the last name Murphy come from, if you don't mind me
Murphy,
asking?
yeah. So interestingly, Murphy in Gaelic, which is the Irish heritage language, it actually refers to people who used to farm potatoes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I like my potatoes. I like my French fries, my hash browns.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like it's a question. It's interesting because I went onto Google Chrome incognito and I searched your name, and it's like, apparently it's a common search phrase.
Yeah.
Is Abdelrahman Murphy a convert?
The ummah is very predictable. Like, there's no surprises. Everyone sees like light skin, like, oh, it must be a convert. Yeah. I'm sure, I'm sure that a lot of people get that. So, but alhamdulillah, everyone's Muslim. That's all that matters.
All right. Well, with that, let's get into the topic for today,
Yeah, sure.
which is loneliness. And loneliness is an epidemic today. There's a lot of stats out there that a good percentage of not only Americans, but a good percentage of, people in general are very lonely, experiencing some sort of loneliness on a daily basis, weekly basis. Perhaps COVID led to it to a certain extent, but I think in general, because of technology and stuff, people are really more to themselves now than maybe before.
Yeah.
Even within families, like, the joint family system and nuclear families, it's like even that whole system is sort of going out of fashion, so to speak.
Yeah.
What would you say is the Prophet, peace be upon him's, remedy or cure or solution to this very common modern problem that we face?
This is it's a deep topic. And I think that the Prophet ﷺ, one of the things about him that's so profound is that he was a very, very intentional thinker. And he was someone that was very thoughtful in his approach to things. And he didn't just try to put like band-aids on things and say, okay, now you're better, go back, you're fine now. But whenever he engaged with somebody on a specific issue that they were having, he would try to sort of like dive deep, understand what exactly was the cause of it, and then approach that person and see if there was the remedy or the cure for that solution or that issue to provide the solution for them. And so before we talk about the remedies per se, I think the concept of loneliness is defined for us in the Quran, is defined for us in the Hadith, not directly by the idea of like being isolated or being lonely, but it's actually a byproduct of a person trying to operate outside of the normal God-created system, which is that of an ummah, of a society or a community. And when Allah Ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ, that you are a brotherhood of believers and a sisterhood of believers, it's not just like a cliche. It's not just meant to be like this thing that, oh yeah, brotherhood. It's meant to be a lived reality. Brotherhood is an experience. Sisterhood is a feeling, an experience that people feel when someone comes to them after they're coughing and hands them a glass of water. Or when someone is serving iftar on the plate and instead of taking it, they give their own plate to this person and say, I'll get the next one. You can talk all day about brotherhood and sisterhood, but if no one's ever felt it, then no one will ever be able to point at that reference. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he understood that loneliness was a problem, that was the origin of it came from an absence of brotherhood and sisterhood, then that is why the first thing that the Prophet ﷺ endeavored to do with Muslims was to create bonds together. And part of the bonds that he did, it was amazing. He broke down social class, right? He taught people that inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, as Allah says in the Quran, that the most beloved and noble amongst you to Allah are those that have the most God consciousness. That was a pillar of the Quran that the Prophet ﷺ, he reinforced over and over again. when you have people like Bilal radiallahu an, and you have people like Uthman radiallahu an. Bilal, who came right at some point from the slave system that was in Arabia and was purchased and freed by Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu an, and he's praying in line next to the guy who bought him and freed him, and then next to the guy Uthman, who is donating and giving, hundreds of camels before different fundraisers the Prophet ﷺ had, and all of them viewed each other as brothers. How can a person be lonely when they have brothers with them or when they have sisters with them? So this epidemic that we're experiencing now in the modern era, to us it feels a little bit weird because we've advanced so much in technology and science, and we are the beneficiaries of these things. Alhamdulillah, if something goes wrong with our health, we're able to diagnose it with these tools, and we are the beneficiaries of that. But whatever we've grown with technology and science and information and data, we've lost in spirituality. And part of that is that we've lost even the basic etiquettes and morals of what it means to be belonging to something bigger than yourself. There's the joke that kind of everyone tells about, like, when your mom or your dad gives you the phone from a relative overseas. And there's like these TikTok memes now where it's like when your mom tells you, like, oh, your aunt wants to talk to you, and then it shows like a guy jumping out of a window, like trying to get away from it. Why? Yeah. Because we're so individual. Anything that causes us even the slightest amount of discomfort, we're like, I don't want to do it. Even if it's your own relative, subhanAllah. But you read the stories of the Sahaba, and what do they do for each other? Brotherhood cannot be faked. You can't manufacture it from nothing. It's built on meaningful moments that are shared between two or more people. And those moments become the anchor and the fuel for that relationship. So the Prophet ﷺ very longly put to your short question, the way he handled this situation, subhanAllah, was he taught these people not about loneliness, but about brotherhood and sisterhood. And he said that if you really want to save yourself from this serious problem of loneliness, where shaitan will start to come and pick at you, and he'll start to come and exploit you, that emotional void that you're feeling, the Prophet ﷺ said, you need to be with people, be with your brothers, be with your sisters, spend time with them, even if you're not doing anything visibly pious, or we're not going to read Sahih Bukhari, you're just coming together for some Yemeni chai, right? But just that time together, there's barakah, the angels descend. Why? Because brothers and sisters are spending time respectively with each other.
One interesting thing that you mentioned is you use the word spirituality.
Yeah.
And often when we think of spirituality or religiosity, we often think of personal worship, rituals, personal practice, something you do alone between you and like yourself and God.
Yeah.
But you used the term spirituality in the context of community, companionship, brotherhood, sisterhood. To what extent is that communal aspect important to one's spirituality?
100%. I mean, the community, there's a reason why the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca, before even being able to publicly teach, he established a small community center, right? The House of Arqam, Darul Arqam as they called it. And it was not fancy, it was not big, but it served its purpose, which was what? It was a gathering place. And people grew, and we believe in our religion that people grow simply by what we call, in Arabic they say as-suhbah salihah, righteous, good company. If you just spend time with people, then you will actually grow. There's even some stories that scholars have told about, like, when I was with this person, my teacher, even though we didn't necessarily learn or anything, we just prayed together, made some dhikr together, made dua together. They said I left the gathering just feeling so light in my heart, feeling so much better. So yes, spirituality is a goal of every human. And no doubt, there's an element to spirituality that is attained in private moments with Allah. Those little moments at home, you're by yourself, without a doubt, you need to capitalize on those moments. But sometimes the other side of the equation is to make sure that you're not spending too much time alone, that you're not spending all of your time alone, because then you're discounting that there is something to benefit from the company of other people. And we believe, by the way, and this is from our teachers, Sheikh Abdul Nasser, we believe that spirituality is not a feeling, but it's the result of an effort. Spirituality, people chase feelings all the time. Oh, I want to feel this way, I want to feel close to Allah. That's amazing. That's all of our goal. We all want to feel close to Allah. But spirituality, feeling close to Allah, is the result of an effort that you put forth, right? When somebody is sick, Farzan, you've probably heard this hadith before. When somebody is sick, what is one of the good things that a person can do when they find out that their friend is sick?
Yeah, to visit their friend.
Yeah, visit their friend. And customarily, are you Pakistani?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in Pakistani culture, in Egyptian culture, in Muslim kind of cultures, What do you bring with you when someone's sick?
Food.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
You bring them some food.
Yeah.
So if someone hurt themselves, they just had surgery, they just, you bring them some food, you bring them, maybe you cook for them, or you order some food, you bring it over. Why? Like, why? They're sick. Like, is the food medicine? Is the food, like, does it have the cure in it? Is your presence somehow going to fix them? Are you a doctor? No. None of that actually is, applied from a secular lens. You're actually bringing no benefit to this person, right? Okay, now from a psychological lens, what are you doing? You're bringing them some company, right? You're bringing them some, but really, like, is the food going to be all that important? Not necessarily. But from the spiritual lens, we believe that when a person visits their friend who is sick or their relative who is sick, that the angels descend upon that gathering. And we believe that wherever the angels descend, Allah's barakah descends. And what is barakah? Barakah is when Allah puts something special in a moment that makes it better than it should be, that makes a person heal faster than they should. I can tell you, man, I tore my ACL a couple years ago. I actually tore the other one, and I tore my second one. And subhanAllah, I got back to health with this one, and then I tore this one, and it was just, tearing the second one was tough. I'm a little bit older now, and there's a big mental kind of hurdle when you have an injury that makes it that you're unable to walk, you're unable to pray. And the second time I tore my other ACL, I had 2 young kids, and they're ready with Baba. You know how it is, like, toss me in the air and play with me. And they see me laying down, or they see me with my leg out. And it was a very, very difficult, dark time, subhanAllah. And I know a lot of people with chronic health issues, they experience this. And I'll tell you this, man, there was nothing that made my day brighter than when I had a friend call me and say, I'm on my way. They didn't even have to bring anything, man. Just on their way. Doing what? Nothing. We just sat on a couch together, showed each other funny videos, memes, and just spent time together. But wallahi, those are the moments that brought me out of the darkness that I was experiencing, the loneliness that I was experiencing. And so the Prophet ﷺ, amazing masterclass. How do you fix loneliness? You have to be around people. And you have to be the one that notices that other people are in need of your company. And just do the thing that maybe your nafs doesn't want to do. We're in the DoorDash era. Yeah. Oh, they're sick? Let me send them something. Yeah. No, dude. Get up, go buy the food, and drive it over there. It's not the same as the DoorDash driver who's driving it over. You getting up and doing it is bringing the malaika. The DoorDash driver dropping it off, maybe one angel shows up. But you showing up, thousands of angels descend. And the barakah that Allah Ta'ala brings to that is going to be a part of that healing process, both internally and externally.
Absolutely. So the question then is, how do you find friends and make friends that, right? How does a person actually find a space that's welcoming, that they can build that brotherhood and sisterhood, make those long-term friendships, basically?
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting about the concept of space is that we oftentimes focus on like the aesthetic or the expression of it, but we need to really focus on more the function of it. Aesthetics will come. You have nice furniture, you'll have nice paintings and all of that. But even with roots, a lot of people don't know, like, the roots that they might see now is not the roots. You remember the old roots. Yeah. The roots that they might see now is not the roots that we had, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And that roots was like, honestly, it was kind of janky. Like, it wasn't very, in some ways, if you looked at it, you're like, this place is kind of okay. And then even before that, we would host it at any open gathering we could. We would find maybe like the empty hall of a masjid. Maybe it was the sisters' musalla that wasn't being used at that time, and we would just try to gather. What was the point? The point was not about the physical space. It was about the actual function, what was happening there. And so we gathered with that intention, that purpose. The other thing I think that's interesting about your question, which is like people struggle to find friends. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that one of the most valuable ways of finding friends is to be a good friend and to not focus on quantity, but to focus on quality. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave a beautiful narration where he said, don't be angry with each other. Don't envy one another. These are things that deflate friendships immediately. Doesn't matter how close you are to somebody. If you're constantly angry with each other, or if you're constantly envious of one another, doesn't matter how close you are. That friendship is on its way out. So he said, don't envy one another. Don't be angry with one another. And then he said, and be brothers. Be brothers. That's an expression being told to both people, not one. The Prophet ﷺ is not just telling someone, hey, Farzan, be nice to Abdelrahman. Abdelrahman, be nice to Farzan. He's saying, Abdelrahman, if you want to be friends, then you got to be nice. You have to be. It's like what we teach children. I feel like I'm talking to my son. if you want to be friends, you got to be nice, right? And we laugh and we smile when it's an 8-year-old kid, but what about when it's a 28-year-old person? And I think a lot of times we expect that people should, there's like this weird, almost like matchmaking of friendships, right? Do we match this and that? Well, the only way that you're going to find out is if you can express your friendliness, your friendship, your brotherhood, your sisterhood in a way and in a space that gives you that opportunity. The masjid could be that for some people. Inshallah, that's one of the goals of the masjid, is to bring people together. It could be a community space, or as people call them sometimes, third spaces, right? Like Roots, like Mosaic in Chicago, like all these other projects that we see, mashallah, people taking off, Oasis as well. But really, spaces aside, it's about you as a person and it's about your heart. Don't worry about numbers. Don't worry about how many people on Instagram or this and that. Don't worry about that stuff. Having a few good friends, and you and I are both old enough to know this, having a few good friends is really the way forward. You know, you could have 30 people that know your name, 50 people that know your name. It doesn't matter, man. How many of them are going to call you when you're sick, right? You know, the ACL thing I told you about. There were very few people out of the amount of people that I know that like called and came over, right? And not to blame anybody, not to blame it. People got life circumstances. I get it, right? But it was very interesting to me that, you know what, out of everyone that I love, these guys, these 4 or 5 guys, these are the guys that when they're sick and when I got to make sure that I make them feel this way too. And also even the guys that didn't, I'm going to maybe be a better friend, not than them, but than I used to be. I'm going to be better than I used to be. And when I find out that something's on their mind or they're struggling emotionally, mentally, physically, I'm going to make time to call them, to go by and see them. That way I can enhance this relationship because I'm not living up to my part of it, right? So the answer to your question again, people have to be more concerned. What kind of friend am I? Not what kind of friends are my friends. What kind of friend am I? If I'm always backbiting and lying and being mean and, you know, making fun of somebody, how long is that friendship going to last? But if I'm the kind of guy that's thoughtful, that's intentional, that's kind with my words, that's complimentary, and just generally a good time to be around, then I guarantee you that you will find yourself, inshallah, surrounded by the people that you love.
So what was it about the prophetic community that made it so welcoming, that made it such a, like, it, you know, it thrived?
Yeah.
Obviously, that the proof is what's happened today.
Till today,
you know. I think I've heard you in a podcast, in a past podcast, say that, you know, the Prophet, peace be upon him, perfected the sort of, you know, the building of a community, and we're just trying to replicate that here at Roots.
We're just trying to chase it. Everyone, every person who's trying to do community is trying just to build what the Prophet ﷺ perfected. And we're not trying to build it because you can't reach it, but we're trying to like mirror it in some way. And you know, the Prophet, I mean, look at all the stories that we hear, Farzan. You might have heard it in the Friday khutbah. You might have heard it. But the Prophet ﷺ, like, have you ever come across a narration where the Prophet ﷺ looked at somebody and said, "Get out of here. You don't look right. You're not dressed right. You're not doing this right." Being welcoming is not just like a passive thing. Being welcoming in community spaces is an active thing. You actually have to ask yourself, am I welcoming? We have this acronym for someone when their face is not welcoming. I'm not going to name the acronym, but it's 3 letters. If you know, then you know. And there are times when you have to walk into a gathering and you have to first ask yourself, like, is my face okay? Because why? Because the companion said, what about the Prophet ﷺ? He was always smiling. And we know for a fact he wasn't always smiling because we have narrations of him crying. We have narrations of him in battle. We have narrations of him angry. But what it means when the companion says he was always smiling is that he smiled so much that when I close my eyes and think of his face, I think of him smiling. Just like, think about your parents. When I close my eyes and think of my mother, what am I imagining? When I close my eyes and think of my wife or my husband, what am I imagining? The default, you know that there have been other emotions that they've had, but the default is what? For the Prophet ﷺ, it was smiling. So when you engage in community spaces, a lot of people, we forget that very basic prophetic principle. Just smile. Say salam. Welcome somebody. You know, I always tell people when they come to Roots and they'll say, man, thank you, this place is, I say, you know what? This space is better because you're here. Because wallah al-azim, if I'm sitting up there giving a talk and no one's here, it's kind of lame. But if I'm gone and people are just having coffee and lemonade, it's actually kind of dope. Like, it's still pretty cool, you know? So really valuing the community and telling people, like, you are what make the community valuable. If you were absent, we'd be worse off. We wouldn't be as nice tonight. Thank you for coming. Thanks for joining us. So community has to be intentional. It can't be an accident. It's not haphazard. You have to be really thoughtful about it. The Prophet ﷺ made sure that all the companions knew. Think about like the transition from Mecca to Medina, and think about these people who have been now removed or kicked out of their homes are coming to Medina. When you're kicked out of a place and you have nothing, you have no leverage. Like you'll take whatever you can get. And the Ansar, the Prophet ﷺ taught the Ansar, and he perfected with them this act of welcoming. And to the point where even some of the companions would like split what they had 50-50 with this new person that just joined them. They just met them for the first time in their life. Here's 50%. Take whatever I got. Imagine you got 2 cars, take 1. Well, I mean, it gives me goosebumps even thinking about it. I don't know. I'd be like, you can have a slice of my pizza. You know, like, I don't know about a car.
Yeah.
But that's how they were. So welcoming, if we're not being asked to give away half of our wealth, that's a companion trait, right? But we're being asked, like, can you at least move over a little bit? Like someone walks in, can you smile at them? Can you ask them what their name is? A lot of times you walk into spaces that are meant to be for community or worship, and everyone walks in and walks out. No one knows each other. Such a strange thing. What we should walk in, we should say salam, get to know the name of somebody. You don't got to like do like an inventory of their whole life, but at least know their name. And then walk out and you say, hey, I'll see you next time, inshallah. Take care. Slowly over time, that relationship builds. So welcoming has to be a communal trait. Everyone in the community has to buy in. And this means that teachers, shuyukh, imams, ustadhas, everybody, we all have to make this a point where we talk about it and say, guys, everyone here has to be welcoming. The second thing that's really important that we focus on here at Roots especially is meaningful. I want to make sure that every gathering here has some kind of meaning. We don't just sit around and do nothing, right? There's a social aspect. There's an enrichment aspect. We learn, we reflect. There's a service aspect. And all of those things, we try to accomplish a certain goal, right? So there's meaning to it. And then the last thing is that we hope and pray that people have such a beautiful experience that they leave feeling nurtured. What does that mean? Have you ever been to a really nice restaurant?
Yeah.
Okay. MashaAllah. You go to a nice restaurant.
I don't get the wrong.
Yeah. Have you ever in your life? Yeah. One time. Or you've been to a restaurant, how about this, that you really enjoyed?
Of course.
That you had a meal that you really enjoyed. Okay. If you're like me and you go to this restaurant and you're having a meal you're really enjoying, you're finishing your meal and you're kind of already like, when can I come back? Yeah. You know, like you're looking at the calendar. Whose birthday is next? You know, like, exactly. You know, like whose anniversary? Like, is anyone graduating soon? Because you want to come back and you're like, I want to have this place again. I want our community spaces to give that feeling to us. That when you're leaving from Sheikh Mikhail's halaqah, you're like looking at the calendar. You're like, when can I come back? Is something tomorrow? Is there something Friday? Is there something Saturday? Because I was just here on Wednesday for Sheikh Mikhail's halaqah and like I had an amazing time. If we can focus on these 3 things, we've accomplished a little bit of what the Prophet ﷺ accomplished. When people arrived, they were welcomed. Every interaction they had with him was meaningful. And they left in tears. Mu'adh bin Jabal left Medina, and the Prophet ﷺ said, you know what, Mu'adh, when you come back, I may not be here. And he started crying. He couldn't even imagine. He was so nourished and nurtured by the presence of the Prophet ﷺ in that city that he could not fathom, what will it be like when you're not here, Ya Rasulullah? I want to come back right away. There was the group of companions that came and they said, Ya Rasulullah, we came here, we left our parents crying and we came here. Like that's how deeply connected we are to you, Ya Rasulullah. And he told them what? Go back and make them laugh just like you made them cry, just like you left them crying. So he taught them, but still, what was their heart? Their heart was what? I feel so nourished by your presence, Ya Rasulullah. It's very, very important that in community spaces, we don't just take people for granted. And we don't just say, yeah, they have to come here anyways. We do Jummah here, they have to come. No. Treat every person in your community space like you could lose them. Because if you really think that you could lose them, you'll make sure that they never, ever are lost. You'll make sure you never leave them with a bad taste, that you never make them feel unwanted or unwelcome. You'll make sure that when they leave, they're already planning to come back, inshallah.
So a few years ago, when I was a youth director, I attended an imam and youth director training. I believe it was in Atlanta, which was led by Sheikh Yasser Burgess.
Oh, nice.
And there were imams and youth directors from across the country there.
Yeah.
And there was pretty much a consensus when Sheikh Yasser asked all of us to get into small groups and discuss who the most neglected / underserved / basically people missing at the mosque, who they are. And across the board, across the country, it was pretty much your college, young professionals, young families, that age group, pretty much like you can say 18 to 35, pretty much, you know? And when you go to the average mosque, even those that are like very big masajid here in the DFW area, that is pretty much the segment you won't really see much. You'll see, you know, people have Sunday schools, you know, for the younger ages, you have some, you know, up to the teens. And then you pretty much have other things for like the, you know, the seasoned professionals, the adults and stuff, right? So that sort of middle segment is missing. From what I understand, like Roots here as the community, did it start off really appealing to that specific segment?
It's interesting you asked that. Yeah, we had just had a conversation last week at one of our meetings where we talked about kind of like the origin of Roots, and then kind of like how it blossomed or bloomed, as some might say, into a different sort of presentation. But yeah, our core was the young professional and the young family. The young professional, the young couple, the young family. And really the young professional, the young couple. So why? Because as you said, I looked around and there was a Sunday school in pretty much every, you know, masjid or every Islamic center. There was some kind of youth group, something happening with youth. There was, some had like youth directors like yourself. Every college has some kind of MSA, right? Some have like even, you know, mashallah, really successful MSAs, big MSAs. So there was always something going on for like that age group at some level. It may have not been perfect, but there was something. Then you fast forward, so you get to like 22. Then you go all the way up from 22 to like 40. And there's really not much going on for that demographic. And then after 40, there's people who are then putting their kids in the Sunday school. So now they're coming to the tafsir halaqa, and they're attending the different classes and the, you know, the workshops at Maghrib, or, you know, any of these organizations, Miftah, etc. But there's like a middle class that's just missing completely. And this was like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And I was like, man, we got to like actually think about this. You know, we have to address the fact that where are all these young professionals going? You know, they're living at a time of their life that's like very challenging. They are graduating college, getting jobs for the first time, making money. They have responsibilities, but they also have freedom. And they're also not under the watchful eye of maybe their mentors, their parents, and other people in their life. So they're primed to make some pretty tough choices and have some pretty tough choices in their life. And we need to be there as a community to make sure that they have the village that they need. And so that's why in decisions that we made, we decided that we were going to focus primarily on young professionals. And to be honest with you, Farzan, this was a risky decision because anyone knows if you want to start a business, the demographics that you target are parents and pet owners, because those are the people that will spend irrationally, right? I'm a parent. I don't care what the basketball league costs. Just take my card, because I want my son to play basketball. He loves it. I want him to play. My cat, I want my cat to have this. I don't even look at the price, right? I'm a pet owner. So to start an organization that was built primarily on serving young professionals who are in their initial stages of earning and saving, there was really not a lot in terms of our donations forecasting that we could maybe expand. But subhanAllah, what we found was this. For whatever chance we took on banking on the young professionals, we found that the sheer volume was overwhelming. And what that means is that in our sustainer model, we actually don't need people to donate a lot of money. It's like a movie ticket. If everyone can just give $10 a month, then we'll be able to continue renting the spaces and having the refreshments and having the food. And that was our model. And we saw that so many young professionals, subhanAllah, they felt connected and they felt that they had finally been seen. You know what I mean? And I think that's really where, subhanAllah, Roots, in a lot of ways, kind of like took its initial footing. And then from there, of course, these young professionals are maybe meeting people in the community, talking for marriage, engaged, married, then having kids. So you're starting now to increase this from the inner circle, the outer rings, right? The life cycle. And that's where Roots now, alhamdulillah, we serve, you know, kids, young kids, middle-aged kids, teenagers, college students, young professionals, young families, and even now our elders. We do a lot of programs for seniors and elders. But it all started with that middle piece. Yeah, it all started there.
We are so blessed to have Roots here. It's a very unique small concept. It's one of the first of its kind, really. Again, the term third space, if you want to use that. So if someone's listening to this and they feel lonely, and they're like, yeah, man, like everything he said resonates with me. I need to find a community. I need to find a space. But guess what? Like I'm searching, but there's nothing. It's just masajid, And really, other than that, there's not really many options. There's no roots in the majority of America, from what I know, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you have one or two other examples. So someone's watching in the US, Canada, UK, whatever, maybe they haven't found that space, or they can't find that space. So what suggestions do you have for that person?
I think the first thing I would say is that the masjid is the house of Allah. Find company with Allah first. Yes, I believe that community spaces that are more casual in nature is a great front door to the masjid. That's my intent, is that people who are not yet ready to go to the masjid for whatever reason, if they come to a place like Roots, it's just a coffee shop. And then there's like a small lecture. And then after maybe like 6 or 7 weeks, like you can join us for Maghrib. And then maybe you like it. Maybe the Qari was like pretty dope. You're like, that guy sounds beautiful. And you keep coming back, right? And that's kind of the plan perhaps that might work for some. But what I would say is on a Tuesday for Dhuhr, in the middle of the day, don't ever discount going to the masjid and feeling that presence of Allah. And a place like Roots can never replace that. And I want that to be like very clear. You know, people should not be going to traveling and visiting community spaces and neglecting Umrah and Medina. Like you should not be, they're not in competition with one another, right? We should be making the masjid a part of our life. And then also we should be making community spaces a part of our life. And if those two buildings can be connected and right next to each other, that's amazing. But if they're not, that's okay. But we have to be responsible and we have to be very intentional about how we budget our time, that we never ever trade off our relationship for the masjid for a relationship with the community space, you know, or vice versa. Make sure that we keep both in mind. So if a person's feeling a sense of disconnectedness, number one, Allah is always there. You know, as the La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana. Abu Bakr and the Prophet ﷺ were in the cave, and إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ لَا تَحْزَنْ, when the Prophet ﷺ said to his companion, don't grieve, don't be sad. Loneliness is inherently a sad feeling. It's a feeling full of grief, and Allah sometimes places loneliness in your life just so you can run back to Him, because you're trying to find it elsewhere. Like, I want to be full of social love and be with my friends and this and that. Sometimes no one's picking up the phone. You're texting like, hey, can we play ball tonight? No one's answering. Hey, who's free tonight? No one's answering. You know who's calling you? Allah's calling you. Go to the masjid. Pray Isha. Sit there for 5 minutes and just talk to Allah. It's a Wednesday night, you're by yourself. It's okay. We'll try again tomorrow. The masjid needs to be the anchor. Then after that, what you'll end up hopefully finding is people who have that like-minded understanding. Doesn't mean that you're all like perfectly pious people, but you all value the same things. You know, it's like people who value, health, but they're not necessarily like the personal trainers, but they love going to the gym and getting a good workout in, but they're not necessarily personal trainers. None of us are the spiritual equivalent of a personal trainer. We're all working on ourselves. But if we can surround ourselves with each other and we can help each other and motivate each other, that becomes our village. So we need to anchor ourselves to Allah. The second then is we need to connect ourselves with each other. And the third is that we need to make sure that we live the traits of community in our own personal lives. We need to be people that have this generosity, this grace, this forgiveness. Everyone wants to be forgiven, but nobody wants to forgive. Everybody wants to be dealt with patiently, but no one wants to have patience for others. So if you want to do something for somebody, or if you want someone to give you some benefit, you have to be the one who's giving the benefit as well. And that relationship that you're trying to look for is only going to be able to breathe and survive if you give it the oxygen of good character. Good character, that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he focused on that. Good character is the only way that we can let these relationships thrive with each other. Keeping in touch with each other, saying salam to one another, beginning with salam. The Prophet ﷺ said the one who gets the reward is the one who starts the salam. Because why? That person's not arrogant.
Yeah.
An arrogant person's like, he sees me. He'll come over to me.
Yeah.
But the humble person says, there he is, and rushes over and says salam. And then the best is when two people are like rushing to each other, right? So the characteristics and the traits of good company and good companionship, they are the traits of good character. And then that person, inshallah, will feel this effect. And hopefully they'll have Allah, they'll have friends, and they'll be able to have both of those relationships, inshallah.
What's interesting is when the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he entered Medina, because Medina is, like you said, this sort of epitome of like a community that you want to model, right? And so when he first entered the community or the city of Medina, and of course his first goal was to build a community. And it's interesting because you have the what you mentioned earlier was kind of software and hardware, right? Often we tend to focus on hardware. Oh, the decorations, you know, the furniture, this, that, right?
Yeah.
But software, it's like, hey, you know, what is the vibe like? You know, the gathering, bringing people together.
Yeah.
You know, it could be the plainest walls, the smallest place,
Yep.
but it could be full of barakah and blessings, right?
Absolutely.
So when he entered Medina, he said to people, and of course, the exact words I'm trying to recall, but I think he said, أيها الناس أفشوا السلام وأطعموا الطعام وصلوا الأرحام. It's interesting that those first three is spread peace and feed people or break bread with people and you know, maintain your ties of kinship. All of those are communal. All of those have to do with other people. And then the last one is وَصَلُّوا بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٌ. Like, you know, pray while people are asleep. But the first three are like, hey, this is dealing with people, right? So I don't know if you have any
Shaykh
comments on
al-Nasr
that.
actually, when he taught us that hadith for the first time we learned it, that what you just said beautifully, he said as well. And he added this layer that I thought was so profound, which he said is that your relationships with people, you should never use Allah as an excuse to be bad to people. It's easy for people to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't hang out, man, or I can't come visit you when you're sick, I have to pray. Qiyam. You know, the wasallu bil layli is referring to the extra prayers, because the 5 prayers people should be doing. But that's why it says in the night, you know, fil layl. But the Prophet ﷺ here is saying your prayer should never be an excuse to be detached. Like the Prophet ﷺ was the best of friends and the best of worshippers. There's no competition. The best of friends, the best of spouses, the best of fathers, the best of relatives, the best of everything, and the best of worshippers. You don't have to make people feel like because you're significantly religious that all of a sudden now they can't have the best version of you, right? And that charter of Medina, that mandate that he gave on the first day that he arrived, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is an exact example of that. Just be that person. Spread peace, share your food with each other, make sure that your family knows that you're there for them, that you love them. And then at the same time, when everything settles down, right, as Allah Ta'ala says, وَجَعْلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا, when the night has been covered, then you can go to your corner of your house, you can walk to the masjid, drive to the masjid in the dark, and you can pray by yourself, and you don't have to let that disrupt any of your responsibilities to anyone else. Because why? Everyone's going to sleep now, you know. And that's the beauty of this spiritual path, is that the Prophet ﷺ demonstrated both sides of that for us.
So you talked about the mosques and how people should be connected, they should be attending, but you know, people may not feel welcomed. You know, I heard this quite a well-known statement of the mosques are the hospitals of the heart. You know, like it's where you go when you're sick spiritually to get healed and to get better. But the way sometimes the mosque comes across to people is that, oh, you have to have a certain sort of baseline of spirituality, or, you know, there's almost like these prerequisites you have to meet to be like, you know, be able to go. But like if someone shows up like looking a certain way or acting a certain way, or, you know, just being themselves, just being like, man, like I'm messed up, I'm going through something, and like, you know, they may or may not, and often have not received that sort of a welcome, you know, kind of a welcome experience where they're like, man, like, you know, I'm so glad I came here, because it's actually the opposite. Sometimes they feel like, man, I don't want to ever come back to the mosque, unfortunately. So, you know, what do you say to a person like that who's been to a mosque and who's really had such a negative experience before?
I think, you know, this is a powerful question. It's tough. It's tough because what do you tell someone who has been made to feel like they don't belong somewhere? It's tough, man. But I will say this, for the person that has been made to feel that way, just know that, you know, when you go to Medina, when you go to Mecca, and this is why, you know, Shaheed Malcolm X, rahimahullah, like his story is so beautiful, because he really highlights, maybe for the first time in English literature, the idea of what it means to be welcomed by Muslims. And he shares his story that, you know, it doesn't matter what color you were, and this was in like a very much racially tense American society. He says, it doesn't matter what color you were, everyone greeted you like you were their brother. And I think when people imagine that perfect society, they think of that experience. But then, of course, we have to realize that humans are human, and along with our humanity comes our flaws. And so there could be somebody in a given masjid or in a given Islamic center or in a third space, they're not like safe from this, right? Which that person, because they're not acting on knowledge and they're not acting the right way, they do something that is actually, it repels people. And I think that we all need to make a very powerful statement to one another here that that's not representative of Allah and His Messenger. I oftentimes call these people the Bedouins of the community, because when you read the Hadith, there's always like a story about the Bedouins. The Bedouins were very like raw people. They lived in the desert. They didn't have like the etiquettes of a city person. They lived out in the middle of nowhere, and so they didn't have to necessarily like refine their character all the time. And so whenever a Bedouin person showed up to ask the Prophet ﷺ any questions, the companions got really excited. And they got excited because they knew that this person was going to be very direct. Because they all had shyness and they didn't want to ask the Prophet ﷺ. They didn't want to bother him too much. And so even when they asked him, they would ask him in very quick, questions, or they would ask in language that was kind of masked. And so the Bedouin person shows up and just kind of goes at it. And they're all like, yeah, finally, look, we get to, live our lives vicariously through this person who's asking the Prophet ﷺ. We get to learn. And so you're always going to have those Bedouins, It doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them a little bit uncouth, a little bit more, unrefined. And they're always going to exist. So how do we deal with that? Well, we want to prepare our communities to be able to deal with, all types of treatment in the masjid. Be graceful. The Prophet ﷺ was very graceful with people. There'd be a person who would make a very horrible error in the masjid. The man who came in, the Bedouin man who came in and urinated in the corner of the masjid. He didn't know that it wasn't a bathroom. He didn't know, right? And the companions were all furious. The Prophet ﷺ handled it with grace. He was very merciful to the man, all right? Or the person who comes up to the Prophet ﷺ and demands more money. And he gives money to him and he says, this is it. They said you were generous. And all the companions are furious. And the Prophet ﷺ, he pulls him aside and says, how much do you want? The man says this much, and he gives it to him. So you're always going to run into these people that are just a little bit too sharp on the edges. They give you that cut. Be like the Prophet ﷺ in that moment. Be like him. It's true. You're right. They should not treat people like that. You're right, 100%. And we need to work on that. But you know what? The Prophet ﷺ also shouldn't have been treated like that. But he couldn't have just looked at that person and said, how dare you? And he has the power to make that person's life, go away. And he doesn't. He models and teaches. And who knows, maybe your interaction with that person, that very rude, inappropriate, impolite person, maybe your interaction will serve as a strength for someone else. Maybe you're going to teach that person. Or maybe you're going to be, someone's going to watch that interaction. They're going to say, wow, that person is committed to this place. Doesn't matter who treats them like this. They're committed. It's going to be strength. But most importantly, it's going to be strength for you. You're going to realize that you belong here no matter what. And then hopefully, inshallah, as you said, as time goes on, we'll be able to extract these poor character flaws out of our communities entirely, inshallah.
I've been meaning to ask you a question, which is, nowadays, when the virtual world is a world on its own, and now you have tribes and you have, communities online, do you feel that it's enough to be or to seek out an online community, or what is one missing out on if they say, hey, I'm just going to do the online community, or, I have my own whatever people.
Yeah. The online community reminds me of there's a lot of value to it. There's a lot of importance to being connected to people. I have a lot of friends that I don't see very often, but we connect through WhatsApp groups or on iMessage, or we text each other, and we keep in touch. So I'll make that analogy and say that there could be a group of people that you connect with that you don't get to see very often, if more than once a year at all. Is there value to that relationship? I think so. But I think it's kind of like a supplement. It's something that is helpful if and only you already have your nutrition set. But if you're taking supplements and your baseline nutrition's bad, it's not going to help you that much. It might give you a little bit of benefit, but really the true benefit of all of this is going to be when your foundation is good. So if somebody has a healthy online relationship with somebody, if I have brothers in Chicago, I don't live in Chicago anymore, unfortunately, fourth holiest city in the world. But if I have brothers there and I keep in touch with them, it's only going to be meaningful if I have a solid relationship here in my home in Dallas on the ground. But if I'm completely isolated here and all of my friendships and all my relationships are only online, there will come a point and there will come a time when I feel a sense of loneliness and a sense of disconnectedness that I can't remedy via AI. ChatGPT cannot be my friend.
Yeah,
You
that's
know
a
what I
whole
mean?
other topic.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. Cannot be my friend, right? So I would say this: if you have a great online community, if you have a group of people that you really connect with, that's amazing. Use it as something that is complementary to your real life community, right?
Yeah, and I feel like it's almost like you have the in-person community, then it's like you said, supplement is like the online.
Yeah.
But then I like people have this void, like you said, isolation, right? And it brings up that I think that phrase, it's like, Satan, the devil, he attacks the lone sheep, basically. He's
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
wolf, right? So if
yeah.
you're by yourself, you're isolating yourself, like you're setting yourself up to just be attacked,
Yeah.
right? But people, like, they have that void, and whatever obstacles are in their way of becoming a part of an in-person community, then they're filling that void with other things.
Yes.
ChatGPT,
Yep.
video games, a bunch of other stuff. And it's like, it's not going to fill that void. But like, what advice do you have to someone who's like really just stuck in that cycle, that they've not been to maybe a community, a third space, a masjid for like a long time. They've just
Yeah.
been on their own, but they feel that void. What would you say to that person?
You just got to get out. You have to take the first step.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is do something that's not too intimidating for you, but make sure you do it
Mm.
and get out there. Jummah prayer is a great example. But honestly, I'm a big fan of the weeknight masjid. I think a lot of people underestimate the power and the serenity of going to pray at the masjid at night by yourself. Sometimes when you live a busy life as well, you got a lot of work and family stuff. Sometimes like a Tuesday night Isha, like nothing hits like that. You're just by yourself. You're driving there. Weather's nice, windows down. Just maybe you call your mom or you call your friend on the way, or maybe it's just nothing, just quiet. You go pray and then you just leave. Sometimes like that interaction with people on a very sincere level. You're not going there to meet up anybody. There's no Facebook Marketplace, deal going down. You're literally just going there to be with Muslims. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open your heart and He'll open the door to more of those interactions. And who knows? Maybe there's somebody at the masjid giving out some fruit, some watermelon, or they're handing out chai, and you're like, this place isn't so bad. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it almost like becomes a part of your regimen, right? Oh, it's Tuesday night. I got to go pray tonight. I'm going to go pray in the masjid this week. And those kinds of steps, wallahi, it seems like, oh man, can that really help that much? I promise you it can. Yeah. I promise you it can. Then from there, you get the courage to maybe hop into like a lesson or a halaqah. Yeah. But it all starts with making that connection to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, there's that statement, right? Like there's harakah and there's barakah and harakah.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
There's blessings and movement
Allah
of like just
blessings.
taking action.
Just do it. Your intention is good, but you have to do something. Get up and do it, and you'll see, oh man, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say someone's watching this, we're about to wrap this up.
Yeah.
If there was one thing, like let's just say someone's watching this, they're like really lonely, they came across this video somehow. What's the one thing they can do? Maybe the answer is just what you just mentioned, but like what's that one thing they can do that you think would make the biggest difference?
I would say actually the one thing, if you're asking me like the one thing besides everything we've talked about, is just reach out to somebody. Sheikh Mikhail is like a huge proponent of this, and I really thank him for this, is that he's trying to make it normal, especially for men, that if you feel lonely, just reach out to someone, man. And don't feel shy or embarrassed saying like, hey man, I just feel really lonely right now. Some things in life will hit you harder than anything you can imagine. And the strength that you're looking for to get through that is found in the moment where you could admit that you feel kind of alone. And people, subhanAllah, people might make excuses to come over and help you move some furniture upstairs. Hey, can you help me, man? I got a dresser, I got to move. You're like, oh man, I pulled my back, whatever. People will make excuses for certain things. But I'm telling you, wallahi, if you get the courage and muster up the courage to tell someone, hey, I'm feeling kind of lonely, I can't imagine anyone looking at that and ignoring you. That's something they're going to be really concerned about. And that'll be hopefully the beginning of your journey to fighting that and to conquering it. But you have to get that courage to text somebody that means something to you and to say, I'm only reaching out to you because I feel this way. And I want you to know that. And I'm not trying to make you feel bad or guilt you, but I just need your help. Yeah. Just feeling a little bit by myself right now.
Yeah. I'm actually, I think you're absolutely right, because I've gone through periods in my life, of loneliness. I think everyone has to a certain extent. And, anyone I've spoken to who I've told, man, I'm going through a tough time, I'm lonely, or whatever it may be, without question, again, if it's someone who that you're close to or that you have some sort of relationship with already, they're always like, man, just hit me up. Just let me know when you hang out. Hey, let's talk. Whatever. Like it's always, they're always willing to. I think the hesitancy is from us, from the person themselves.
Admitting it.
Admitting it. They almost feel shy, or they almost feel like, some like, oh, what are people going to think about me if I
Yes.
say this or admit this? So yeah, absolutely.
That's a very important step. And again, don't do it with someone random. No DMs on Instagram. Hey, I'm lonely. It's like, okay, creep. But you message somebody that you love, someone that you know has the capacity for it. That's a big one too, right? Hey, I'm not feeling too good about myself right now. Can I call you? Do you want to meet up for something, like get some ice cream, or just go sit outside for a bit? And inshallah, my heart is full of conviction that person will help and respond.
Yeah, it kind of brings it full circle, because the person who is being asked, the reminder is for them just as much, because if someone's reaching out to me saying, hey, I'm lonely, I should, even if, no one can say, hey, I have so much free time, like, I can help whoever, but it's like you try to go out of your way, because hey, like, I need to be there for this person. If they reached out, like, I need to be there, right?
Yeah, it's a real thing at that moment.
Yeah,
May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq, inshallah.
So thank you so much for all your time. I hope that whoever's watching this, if you're lonely, if you're dealing with anything that we've discussed, any of the challenges, struggles, hopefully this conversation brought you some solace, something to take that benefits you and that helps you overcome this struggle.
Yeah, and remember the Prophet ﷺ, he said that Allah Ta'ala is with those who are brokenhearted, and so you're never alone. We just sometimes have to take some steps, but we're never alone. We ask Allah Ta'ala to be with us all the time.
Ameen.